These guys took all the good problems. Problems left. I loved what Diane said about teachers going through a leadership training. And I would extend that and say that I think it would be great if students went through some sort of integral student training as well, because I think it goes in both directions, that students enter into a relationship with a teacher thinking perhaps as a projection on their part, which I thought you spoke very strongly toward. But also, on the other hand, I think that things are presented often from a teacher, that they have to have it all, they have to know it all, and they sort of sell you as that we're going to give you everything, all 8 methodologies, and then there's a sort of bait and switch that occurs, and 2 or 3 years into the Sangha, you find out that you're only actually getting 1 or 2 methodologies, and then there's a big problem left over in what's hanging unattended in your life. And so it'd be great if the teachers were going through some sort of leadership training where they don't have to be equipped in all 8 methodologies necessarily, but know what it is that they are doing and what it is that they're not doing. And for a student to understand that as well, I feel like that could clear up a lot of the muck that occurs within the Sanghas and within these spiritual groups. I've been on the periphery and sort of in and out of a lot of communities, including my own, frankly, in the last year or two. I had a volunteer organization of hundreds of people that dissolved and came undone, I think, as a serious misreading on my part when I entered into the relationship with all those people. And it came from this sort of dynamic. And my close friends within communities and within Sanghas, that frustration that you discovered your teacher is human and the teacher discovers that the student is human, I don't think that that's purely the delusion or the projection of the student or the over lofty expectation of the teacher. I think if there was just more information and clarity and an integral understanding in both directions, it could be very, very helpful. And that would be a fairly attainable thing to put it on our radar in the next 10 years. I think it's already happening, obviously. We have our fun group here together today as part of that milestone. My own fanaticism always tends towards, I'm worried that people won't meditate enough and that the discipline in digging a hole in one deep hole in one place with your contemplative practice will sort of slough off or fall along the wayside now that there's such a rich and vast array. The table is so well stocked for us with all of these items. These beautiful graphs and charts indicate to us this very rich offering that we have to take. And so I constantly, almost like reflexively, come back to some of the studies that show without a contemplative practice, there's not development through stages after a certain age. To me, the implications of that are profound. And it always feels in my gut like the center or the pillar upon which, the primary pillar upon which all of those things can be built and expanded. So part of my worry is that that kind of smorgasbord will take over and we'll think that digging that one deep hole is optional. In the other direction, I like to have paradoxical worries inside of myself. My paradox on the other end of that is that the traditions will become too rigid or are too rigid to allow for surprise and discovery in places we might not imagine. One of the things that I really appreciate as a performer who tours around the country in clubs and colleges and places where spiritual discussion or integral theory is not the context of the evening at all. It's not even on people's mind a lot of times, but it is the compass of my heart and my work. I mean, really as a human being, I see myself trying to inhabit and do the work of love in the world, and that is why I love these charts and graphs, believe it or not, because I think of music and think, initially when you learn to read music, for instance, you have to know that you're looking at an F sharp, and then you're going to a G, and whatever it might be, and so you're literally reading in this one line, and to me this is like a very vast, rich score. And if we could have some sense of musicality of this orchestra, and then the other part of that equation is forgetting and getting to the point of knowing your practice so that you don't have to think it's an F sharp or it's a G anymore. And if we could have that kind of acquaintance with this integral model going into the world, my first and primary encounters with that are when I do shows. Because I have all sorts of ideas about how this cool integral theory and how my meditation practice and all that is going to work its way out and transform everybody in the room when they come to one of my concerts. And it just does not work the way you think it's going to work. If it works in the world, there's all sorts of surprises and turns. And I think that kind of real-world application and understanding that the potency and the use of all of this knowledge in this rich model is to take it back into the world in the service of love. And sometimes I get worried that that gets lost in the excitement of what occurs above our neck.